Today, we're going to dig into a really painful paradox. What happens when a child's greatest gift actually makes them a target? We're looking at the unseen struggle of gifted kids who face bullying, not in spite of their talents, but because of them. So let's just start with the biggest question of all. This is it. This is the whole puzzle right here. I mean, it feels completely backward, doesn't it? We're taught to think of giftedness as this amazing advantage, a ticket to success. But for so many kids, the reality is way more complicated and honestly a lot darker. It really makes you wonder, how on earth does brilliance get a bullseye painted on its back? Before we get into the why, let's just get a sense of the how much. I want you to take a look at this number, 67%. Just let that sink in for a second, because this one statistic tells you pretty much everything you need to know about the scale of this problem. That's right, by the time they hit 8th grade, 2 out of every 3 gifted students have been bullied. So let's be clear, this isn't some rare thing that happens to a few kids here and there. Nope, it's a huge problem, and it's hiding in plain sight. So where does it all start? Well, let's begin with the most obvious suspects. Okay, so our investigation starts where you'd expect, on the playground, in the school hallways, the places where social dynamics are everything. Peer bullying is by far the most common type, and for gifted kids, the reasons are all tangled up in the very way their minds work. So what is going on here? To really get to the bottom of this, we have to talk about something called asynchronous development. And this is absolutely crucial to understand. It just means that a kid's brain might be operating years ahead of their age, but their emotional and social skills, they're right on track for their age or maybe even lagging a bit. And this creates a major disconnect that can be really confusing for them and for the other kids around them. And this slide just lays it out perfectly. I mean, just imagine an 8-year-old kid who can totally hang in a conversation about quantum physics, but then has a complete meltdown at recess because they don't know how to join a game of tag. You see, their intellectual age is way up here, but their emotional age is down here. And for a bully, that mismatch, well, that's an easy target. So what are the actual triggers for the other kids? Well, it really just boils down to a few key things. The gifted child is often seen as a know-it-all just because they raise their hand in class. Their passions, which might be super intense, can come across as weird or odd. And that asynchronous development we just talked about, that can make social situations really awkward. And let's be honest, underneath it all, a lot of the time it's just plain old jealousy. And this is what it actually sounds like in the real world, day in and day out. The bullying isn't always a punch in the hallway. No, it's that constant grinding verbal stuff. It's being called teacher's pet, getting made fun of for your hobbies, and being targeted for just not fitting into some neat, tidy box. But what if the bully isn't another kid at all? All right, so now we're going to move into a part of this story that is way less talked about. And to be honest, it's a lot more shocking. We're about to see how the one person who is supposed to be nurturing a child's gift can sometimes be the one who ends up crushing it. It's a really uncomfortable truth, but we've got to face it. Look, most teachers are amazing. They're incredible advocates for their students. But sometimes a teacher can become a source of bullying. And a lot of the time, they might not even realize they're doing it. The whole dynamic is subtle, but believe me, it is incredibly damaging. What's so wild about this slide is that it shows the disconnect between what the teacher thinks is happening and what the student is actually feeling. So a teacher might think they're making a funny, harmless joke about the little professor in their class. But for that child, it's public humiliation. Or a teacher might get annoyed that a student finished their work too fast. But that student just feels ashamed for being smart. The teacher holds all the power in that room. And for a kid, their words can feel like the final judgment. So why would a teacher ever do this? Well, it's usually not coming from a bad place. A teacher might honestly feel intimidated by a student who knows more about a certain subject than they do. They might mistake a gifted kid's constant, deep questions for defiance. But more often than not, the real root cause is just a lack of training on how to handle the very specific needs of these students. So whether it's coming from a classmate or a teacher, the impact of this bullying it's just awful. Let's take a look at the price these kids end up paying. And we're not just talking about hurt feelings here. We're talking about deep psychological wounds that can last a lifetime. Okay, here's another number. And this one really gets to the heart of how dangerous this all is. 29%. This isn't about test scores or popularity contests. This is about a child's core mental health. Yeah, that's what that number means. Almost a third of these bullied kids have had violent thoughts because of what they've been through. This is the tragic result of making a child feel ashamed of the very thing that makes them special. The emotional toll is it's enormous. And this kind of damage doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow, devastating downward spiral, and it usually follows this pattern. First, the shame sinks in. They start to believe the nasty labels. So what do? They start masking, hiding how smart they are just to try and fit in. Naturally, that leads to their grades topping, and eventually, they might just start avoiding school altogether because it just doesn't feel like a safe place anymore. Their greatest strength has been turned into their biggest source of pain. Okay, so that's the problem. It's heavy. The big question is, what in the world do we do about it? Understanding the issue is step one, but it's not enough. We need to talk about the path forward, how we can build schools and communities where these kids can actually thrive, not just try to survive. For the schools and for the other students, it really comes down to building a culture where everyone feels included. That means things like social emotional learning programs that teach empathy. It means creating clubs where kids can connect over things they're passionate about. And it means celebrating being smart just as much as we celebrate being good at sports. And for teachers, the big critical shift is moving from resentment to recognition. That takes real professional development that's focused on the unique needs of gifted children. It's about training them to see all those questions not as a student trying to defy them, but as a sign of a curious, hungry mind that's ready to learn. But at the end of the day, it really does take a village. This isn't just on schools or on teachers. It takes everyone. We need to get better at spotting both giftedness and bullying early on. We need to make sure counseling is available for the victims, and we absolutely need families to be strong advocates. This is a community effort through and through. So, we'll end right where we started, with that same question. But now, after everything we've talked about, it just feels a lot heavier, doesn't it? The answer isn't simple, but it is clear. It's going to take understanding, it's going to take empathy, and it's going to take a real commitment from all of us to protect our brightest kids. To build a world where their gifts are something to be celebrated, not something they have to hide.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.